Hi guys, very long time no see. I really burned myself out in October. I don't know what it was, but that last video just, I was so tired after that, and I then got carried away with a whole bunch of art projects, and I started collecting typewriters, so I've just been down these weird rabbit holes. I did, however, watch Apartment 7A. And I was so excited to see this movie because I love Rosemary's Baby. It's one of my favorite movies, period. Not just one of my favorite horror movies. I love everything about that movie. And I was watching a YouTube video. I don't remember when this would have been, probably in the summertime. And there was an ad, a movie trailer that came up. And I had the TV muted. And just from the overall aesthetic presented in this trailer, I could tell that it had something to do with Rosemary's Baby. Like, they captured the time period, they captured the style. It's so weird to me that I just knew, and then I'm watching it. I didn't even unmute it because I wasn't near the remote. And I was so excited just from this preview that I couldn't even hear. So, finally watched it. I was very impressed. Very impressed. This is one of those things where they've done it right. They took a minor character from the original movie and they gave her a fleshed out background, which made it a prequel to a movie that I love, and it kept me guessing because I knew certain things had to align. I knew certain things probably were going to get dismissed. It was just very interesting how they chose to handle it, and I commended the actress who plays Minnie, who was Ruth Gordon in the original, and it was Diane Wiest in this movie. It was kind of a shame because you could tell she was trying to channel Ruth Gordon playing Minnie, so she was limited by that, and given that Ruth Gordon just completely owns that role, it was very difficult for her to live up, in my mind, to it. But I thought she did a great job, because I kept reminding myself of the fact that they're different, they don't look the same, they aren't the same age, they don't look the same age. She just had a very... If there was a bigger time frame in between when the events took place, it might have been more believable, but it ended up being that the events butted up against Rosemary's Baby. So it's not like this happened 10 years before Rosemary moved into the building. The guy who played Roman, I can't remember his name, I could tell that he studied Sidney Blackmer, and he did an okay job. Some of the things, some of the mannerisms were like what Sidney did as Roman in the movie, but he just didn't convince me. He did not convince me, and I'm glad that they didn't focus on him as much as they did Minnie. Same with, there were other characters who would have appeared in both movies. Dr. Saperstein, he obviously was not correct, but he was shown so briefly that it was okay. I think they mentioned Lara Louise, and maybe they showed her a little bit in Apartment 7A, but she wasn't a focus like she was in Rosemary's Baby, which is good. The Mrs. Gardenia storyline didn't really match up, and neither did the logistics of Terry getting the apartment, because in Rosemary's Baby, Terry D'Onofrio, she is staying with the Castevets, and the implication is she's staying in their apartment, and Rosemary has received Mrs. Gardenia's apartment, which used to be a part of the same apartment that Roman and Minnie are in, but now they've subdivided it into different parts to make two separate apartments. And Rosemary and Guy take Mrs. Gardenia's apartment when she's in her coma and dies. Well, Terry has her own apartment that the Castevets own or something. She has her own apartment. There's a scene in the laundry room, which is the connection between her and Rosemary. This is where they would have connected in the book and in the movie, because then the joke is in the movie that Rosemary says, "You remind me of Victoria Vetri." The person who's playing Terry D'Onofrio is Victoria Vetri, but she's got a different name. So the actress's name is Angela, I think. And so that was always something that stood out to me as being very clever. Let's get into some of the movie. The cinematography was beautiful. The sets were beautiful, the colors, the theater aspect, because that was another thing that they were able to weave in, the whole theater life, and the makeup, the hair. Although Julia Garner, right? Yeah, Julia Garner, she plays Terry, and she was amazing. She was so good in this role. And she ends up getting a haircut, and I'm guessing it's supposed to be a callback to the Vidal Sassoon short haircut that Mia Farrow got as Rosemary, and it did not look like a 60s haircut to me. I really did not like it. I don't know why they went with it. I liked Terry's storyline. I liked that they gave her a whole background. You know, she came from the Midwest, which is also interesting because she was saying that she came from Nebraska. She mentioned it several times. And Rosemary is from Nebraska. So they were kind of using that small town girl thing. And she came from the slaughterhouse, which is probably symbolic. In Rosemary's Baby, Terry was just kind of they found her on the street. She was into drugs and she was not a great person. Terry in Apartment 7A, she is ambitious and she's a talented singer and dancer, actress. And so it's very different. She's also from the Midwest, and Terry D'Onofrio was obviously New York-ish when we were introduced to her in Rosemary's Baby. They did a callback to the lullaby that Mia Farrow hums or hums, whatever, over the credits. They did a couple new things. There was a sub-basement, which is where all this stuff happened. It was never really, now that I think about it, I guess I always assumed that the Satan impregnating Rosemary scene was in Minnie and Roman's apartment, but maybe they went to a sub-basement. We just never saw it as a thing like that. I don't know. It's possible. You know, there was some recycled dialogue, you know, Hail Satan, the year is one, applauding Terry just like they would later applaud Rosemary. Dr. Saperstein said the whole, you know, no two pregnancies are exactly the same. I have not exactly figured out the Mrs. Gardenia angle to this, because if Terry has her own apartment, there's a scene where she's in the laundry room, which is where she should have met Rosemary, at which point Mrs. Gardenia would have been long, you know, in the hospital with her coma and then dead. So they rushed that, and then Mrs. Gardenia was still alive at that point, and Terry did not interact with Rosemary. And Mrs. Gardenia tried to attack Terry in her apartment. And then some of the apartment reminds me of Rosemary and Guy's apartment, because there's the panel in the closet that comes out, and she was able to go through into Mrs. Gardenia's. So I'm not exactly sure of the layout of the apartments. That would really help if I could figure out where Minnie and Roman's apartment is in comparison to Terry's apartment, in comparison to Mrs. Gardenia's apartment. Because I guess it could just be a much larger apartment than I realized. So Minnie and Roman have a huge apartment that was subdivided into 2 apartments, and they're all connected. I'm not sure though. Regardless, I was very pleased with how they handled it. I always worry when they do prequels and they do remakes, reboots, whatever, that they're gonna ruin stuff. Because I just don't feel like Rosemary's Baby needs to be redone. And I know it was. Zoe Saldana, I think, was in it. It might have been a made-for-TV movie. I'm not sure. I never saw it. But it just... that doesn't need to happen. It's such a good, iconic movie, and it really stands on its own and just is definitive as is. It does not need anything bolstering it, nothing. But I really love the fact that they just took a very minor character, because Terry was so small to the book in the movie. Like, she was in just that one scene, and then we saw her death. And we didn't even see her die. Also, as we're watching it, I'm trying to figure out, well, when is Rosemary going to be the new vessel? Because obviously Terry isn't, unless they somehow change it and get rid of Rosemary entirely. But we know that she's going out the window if it follows Rosemary's Baby storyline. In Rosemary's Baby, they made it sound as though Terry was informed of what was happening and Minnie didn't think that was a good idea. And then Terry went out the window. It was either suicide or it was they had to get rid of her because she was going to blab about it and so someone pushed her. Something. And then in the movie Rosemary's Baby, Minnie says, you know, of all the women in the world, he chose you. Which also makes it sound like Satan decided he liked Rosemary better than Terry, and they had to take care of the fact that he had impregnated Terry. I was always under the impression that Terry had not yet been impregnated when she died. And either she jumped herself or one of the coven pushed her out the window. And that's how we get introduced to Minnie and Roman. And that's how Rosemary and Guy met Minnie and Roman. But in this one, it was more of the fantasy that Rosemary has, that not even a fantasy, it's her plan. She is surrounded by these witches and she realizes what has happened and she decides she's gotta jump out the window and kill herself and this baby. But then she chickens out. She doesn't go through with it. So it was the same situation, but they used Terry. There was a lot of Terry and Rosemary kind of weaving in and out with each other. Terry did a lot of Rosemary type things. I highly recommend watching it. I think I will purchase it because I do want to see it again. I do want to watch them back to back. And I did not think that I would be talking about a Rosemary's Baby adjacent movie before I talked about Rosemary's Baby. That's been on my to-do list for a long time for this channel. Have a spooky day.